December 2017, the New York Times publishes a story that changes the UFO conversation forever. Hidden inside the Pentagon, a little known program had been quietly investigating unidentified aerial phenomenon. Not science fiction, not internet conspiracy forums, a real government initiative. Funded, structured, embedded inside the national security system. Its name, AATIP, or for future reference, ATIP. AATIP stands for the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And suddenly, decades of UFO stigma collided with official government acknowledgement. Military footage emerged. Navy pilots came forward. Congressional interest intensified. And the public began asking a question that had once sounded impossible. Why was the Pentagon secretly investigating UFOs? But the deeper question was even more important. Not did the government believe in aliens, but why did national security institutions decide unexplained aerial encounters deserved formal investigation? That distinction changes everything, because ATIP was not born from curiosity alone. It emerged from military uncertainty, intelligence concerns, advanced sensor systems, unexplained encounters, and growing fears that something operating in restricted airspace was not being adequately understood. Tonight, we investigate how ATIP was created, what triggered Pentagon concern, the role of Senator Harry Reid, the Navy encounters, the Tic Tac incident, the secrecy surrounding the program, the controversy over its findings, the emergence of modern disclosure culture, and how ATIP transformed UFOs from ridicule into an institutional intelligence problem. This is UFO to UAP, the Disclosure Report. I'm your host, Matt Tones, and tonight we open the ATIP files. To understand ATIP, you first need to understand the environment that created it, because the United States government had investigated UFOs before, most famously Project Blue Book, running from 1952 to 1969. Blue Book investigated thousands of UFO reports during the Cold War. Officially, the project concluded that there was no evidence represented extraterrestrial technology or direct national security threats, and publicly the subject gradually became stigmatized. By the late 20th century, UFOs were increasingly associated with conspiracy culture, tabloid television, fringe speculation, and public ridicule. But behind the scenes, military encounters never fully disappeared. Pilots continued reporting strange objects, radar operators logged anomalies, and intelligence systems occasionally encountered things that struggled to categorize in real time. The difference was most of those reports rarely reached public attention. Then technology changed. By the early 2000s, modern military detection systems had evolved dramatically. Advanced radar, infrared targeting systems, electro optical sensors, integrated tracking platforms. The skies were no longer being monitored by human eyes alone, machines were watching too. And according to multiple military accounts, those systems began detecting objects behaving in unusual ways. That distinction matters enormously because the modern UAP era was shaped not only by witnesses, but by sensor fusion. Multiple systems observing the same event simultaneously. That changed the credibility landscape entirely, and it created a difficult intelligence problem. Because once advanced military systems repeatedly encountered unknown objects, the issue stopped being cultural, it became operational. In 2007, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program was established within the Department of Defense. One of the key political figures associated with the effort was Senator Harry Reid. Reid supported funding for the program amid growing concern surrounding advanced aerospace threats and unexplained military encounters. Now, this is important. ATIP was never officially presented as an alien investigation unit. Its framing was national security, aerospace threat assessment. Unknown objects in military airspace create uncertainty, and uncertainty inside defense systems is dangerous because unidentified aerial phenomenon could potentially represent foreign adversary technology, advanced drones, surveillance platforms, electronic warfare systems, sensor anomalies, or genuinely unexplained events. From a Pentagon perspective, all those possibilities required investigation. One reason ATIP became so controversial was because of secrecy. For years, the program remained largely unknown publicly, and that secrecy fueled speculation. Why hide it? Why classify aspects of the work? Why avoid public discussion? But classified programs inside the Pentagon are not unusual, especially when they intersect with intelligence collection, aerospace analysis, military sensor systems, or national defense concerns. Still, the secrecy surrounding ATIP created an atmosphere of intrigue because once the public learned the government had quietly investigated unidentified aerial encounters, the narrative changed permanently. The UFO subject had officially re entered the national security system. Then came the case that changed everything publicly, the USS Nimitz encounter, 2004, off the coast of California. Navy pilots operating from the USS Nimitz carrier strike group encountered an object unlike anything they expected to see. Commander David Fravor later described an object shaped like a tic tac, white, smooth, without visible wings or propulsion. Pilots reported unusual maneuvering behavior, rapid movement, abrupt directional changes, and flight characteristics they struggled to explain. Now, pause here, because this is where careful language matters. The Pentagon did not officially conclude the object violated physics, nor did it officially declare the object extraterrestrial. Instead, military personnel reported behavior investigators could not immediately explain with the available information. And that distinction is critical because the strongest, most disclosure analysis avoids exaggeration. Eventually, three military videos became central to the modern disclosure movement: FLIR 1, Gimbal, and GoFast. Originally leaked and later officially confirmed by the Pentagon, these videos changed public perception dramatically because now the UFO conversation was no longer based solely on eyewitness testimony. Military sensor footage existed publicly. And importantly, the Pentagon acknowledged the footage was authentic military material. Again, that does not equal alien confirmation, but it did represent something historically significant. The government openly admitted its personnel had encountered aerial objects it could not fully identify. That was a major institutional shift. One of the biggest issues ATIP identified was not necessarily the objects themselves, it was reporting culture. Pilots often avoided reporting anomalous encounters. Why? Because stigma destroys credibility. Military aviation culture values reliability, composure, accuracy, and professionalism. Reporting strange aerial encounters risked ridicule, career damage, questions about competence. As a result, many incidents likely went undocumented. From an intelligence perspective, that created a serious problem because if personnel refuse to report anomalies, valued data disappears. ATIP helped expose this institutional weakness, and this may ultimately become one of its most important legacies, not proving extraterrestrials, but normalizing serious reporting. Now, we arrive at the question everyone asks: what did ATIP discover? The honest answer is far less definitive than public mythology often suggests. ATIP did not publicly confirm extraterrestrial visitation, alien spacecraft, or revolutionary propulsion systems. Instead, it documented unresolved uncertainty. Military encounters existed, some incidents lacked immediate explanation, and investigators believed further analysis was warranted. That is much more cautious than many headlines suggested. But importantly, the uncertainty itself mattered because unidentified objects operating near military systems create strategic concern regardless of origin. One of the most sensationalized aspects of the ATIP story involves claims about impossible flight behavior. Online discussion often exaggerated this dramatically. The reality is more complicated. Witnesses described unusual movement, rapid acceleration, abrupt maneuvers, lack of visible propulsion. But interpreting sensor data is extraordinarily difficult. Perspective affects habit. Sorry, Perspective effects happen. Radar ambiguity exists. Optical distortions occur. Incomplete data sets create interpretation problems. That does not mean witnesses fabricated experiences, nor does it automatically validate extraordinary conclusions. It means the data environment remains complex, and that complex is central to modern UAP analysis. ATIP became even more controversial because of Luis Elizondo, a former intelligence official associated publicly with the program. Elizondo argued the government needed to take UAP encounters more seriously. He also became one of the most visible public figures in the modern disclosure movement. Supporters viewed him as a credible insider pushing transparency. Critics questioned the scope of his role, aspects of his claims, and the ambiguity surrounding ATIP's exact structure. Regardless of interpretation, Elizondo helped move the UAP conversation into mainstream public discourse, and that influence cannot be overstated. Another critical factor, Congress. The modern disclosure era did not emerge solely from whistleblowers or media stories. Political pressure mattered enormously. Lawmakers increasingly demanded intelligence briefings, standardized reporting, and oversight regarding unidentified aerial encounters. Why? Because unidentified objects near military operations represent airspace integrity concerns, surveillance risks, intelligence uncertainty, and possible technological threats. This transformed UFO politically. The subject moved from fringe culture into formal oversight infrastructure, and that transition was historic. Now we reach the deeper issue. Was ATIP genuinely transparent or controlled disclosure? Some researchers argue ATIP represented the beginning of gradual normalization, a slow public introduction to a subject previously hidden behind stigma and classification. Others argue ATIP was primarily an intelligence modernization effort, a practical response to military reporting gaps. Perhaps both interpretations contain truth, because disclosure rarely occurs as a single dramatic event. It emerges through institutional adaptation, changing language, evolving reporting systems, public pressure, and gradual normalization. ATIP may represent the exact moment that process accelerated publicly. ATIP did not exist in isolation. Its emergence helped pave the way for the UAP task force, AOIMSG, and eventually ARROW. And this is critical historically because the government did not abandon investigation after ATIP became public, it expanded institutional infrastructure. That expansion suggests the issue remained operationally relevant. Again, not necessarily extraterrestrial, but significant enough for permanent investigative architecture to emerge. And that alone is remarkable. Ultimately, ATIP forced society to confront something uncomfortable. Not necessarily are aliens real, but something more profound. What happens when advanced institutions encounter uncertainty they cannot immediately resolve? Military systems are designed around identification, control, categorization, and yet ATIP exposed moments where certainty broke down, where trained observers, advanced sensors, and intelligence systems encountered anomalies that resisted immediate explanation. That may be the real significance of the program, not confirmation, but acknowledgement of uncertainty. For decades, the UFO subject existed largely outside official legitimacy. Then ATIP changed the landscape, not by proving extraterrestrials, but by institutionalizing investigation. The program demonstrated military encounters were occurring, pilots were reporting anomalies, intelligence concerns existed, and governments were taking the issue seriously enough to investigate quietly. That alone transformed the conversation forever. The unknown had re entered the system, and once national security institutions formally acknowledged uncertainty, public curiosity became impossible to contain. The question remains unresolved, the evidence remains incomplete, and the interpretations remain contested. But one thing is undeniable: ATIP reopened a door the, the government once considered determined to keep closed. Let me say that again. ATIP reopened a door the government once appeared determined to keep closed, and the modern disclosure era emerged through that opening. This has been UFO to UAP, the Disclosure Report. I'm Matt Tones. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe via Spotify. Please share this episode. It's a massive help.